Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to this week's episode of Terrible Deck Tuesdays. Now, this deck, I don't know, calling it a terrible deck I think is a little bit too harsh, but that's just kind of what sounds right for posting like C-tier decks on a Tuesday. But yeah, this is Garchomp Okidogi. I think deck is pretty cool, especially after playing it. It was a lot of fun. Now, kind of the gimmick with this deck is that Okidogi is a 130 hit point basic one prize Pokemon, and it has an ability that it gets 100 more HP and 100 more does 100 more damage if you have a dark energy attached to it. So with a luminous energy on it, you are doing 170 damage with a 230 hit point one prize Pokemon, which is pretty good. That's like a lot of HP to get through for just one prize. Now, to kind of set this up efficiently and as our second, or kind of our main attacker, or our setup attacker, I guess, is the Garchomp EX. It's another card I've also been wanting to make a video on. It's pretty cool. It's got an attack for 1 fighting. It does 160, and we can attach 3 energy from our discard pile to our Pokemon in any way we like. It's also got free retreat, and it also has an attack for 2 colorless that lets us do 120 to one of our opponent's Pokemon so we can snipe the bench, which is also very nice. Another attacker we have is Cornerstone Ogerpon. It's good into Charizard. It's decent against Chimpao. It can be good against Lost Zone decks at certain times depending on what they have. And like Sablezard, it's pretty solid against, but the other version of Lost Zone, since the Ogerpon doesn't hit for weakness, it's not as good into like the Iron Thorns or the Iron Hands, but you are able to one-shot those with the Okidogi, so not too bad. And we do have the Bibarel engine in this deck, always a good option. Yeah, probably you could really go first or second with this deck. I was going first because I want to be able to evolve on my second turn and start accelerating energy into play. And you're pretty reliably going to be able to evolve on your second turn because you can just grab Candy Garchomp with Irida. And the hardest part really is getting the energy into the discard pile. You could play Drillbur, I think it's called, that lets you just discard 3 fighting energy, but that's another bench spot and another Pokemon to find and everything. We are going with Unfair Stamp for this deck. It just seems really good. Just setting your opponent's hand down to 2 and sticking a big one prize Pokemon for them to get through in the active seems pretty good. Also, shout out to whoever is playing this online. It's kind of where I got the idea from. I think I saw someone playing it in a Limitless tournament. That's where I got the inspiration for the Okidogi with the Garchomp, and that person's doing decent with it, so maybe it's not exactly terrible, but it's definitely a C-tier deck. So yeah, that is the list, and let's get into the games. Alright, so I was choosing to go first with this deck. It just kind of makes sense to me to go first with, you know, an evolving deck like this. We have a pretty good start here, able to get down another Gible and a Bidoof, and even get a Luminous Energy on our Okidogi, which is kind of nice. We don't really know what we're up against yet though. Squawkabilly in the active. I was kind of expecting it to be Raging Bolt, but it is Gouging Fire, and that's pretty lucky because our Garchomp is of course a water type, so we can just one-shot these Gouging Fires really easily. And this game, it's going to be more of a Garchomp deck than a Okidogi deck. That's kind of lucky. I barely ever run into decks like a Gouging Fire deck. I don't know how many times I've really played against this deck, and then I play a water deck like this and end up hitting one, which is kind of nice. Because I am just playing 3 games in a row here and just putting the first 3 games that I played with this for this Terrible Deck Tuesday series. Alright, and they knock out my Bidoof, which is kind of annoying. I just gotta hope that I hit a like Candy Garchomp off of my Iono here, which I do, and that's kind of nice. I can also get down another Bidoof and even Ultra Ball away a fighting energy to accelerate. I just read the Garchomp there because I For some reason, I always think Garchomp says accelerate the energy from hand, but I'm thinking of a different card, I think. And yeah, just get to one-shot the what's it called? Gouging Fire. All these the names of the ancient Pokemon are so similar, it's kind of hard to remember them sometimes. But yeah, just get to one-shot it and set up my my Okidogi, which unfortunately has to two-shot the Gouging Fire, but this one also doesn't get one-shot by it. I guess with the Monkey Dory, moving the 20 damage over it does. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard for them to get all of that set up, is kind of my thought right now. They have to get a Dark on their Monkey Dory and 2 more Fire Energies on their Gouging Fire. That's like kind of a lot to ask for. And I'm just able to retreat this Okidogi and then accelerate 3 energy into play and just kind of have a really good board set up here. So I don't really know what they're going to be able to do about this. It's kind of just a bad matchup for them. Like, what are the chances they hit the Garchomp EX deck on the ladder? Yeah, they do just end up conceding. That makes sense. Looks like we're up against Raging Bolt here. This is probably a pretty terrible matchup, I would imagine. This deck really, I don't know, probably doesn't have very many good matchups that you aren't hitting for weakness. But the Raging Bolt can one-shot the Garchomp EXs, which makes it really annoying, and can also one-shot your Okidogis. And kind of the whole idea with this deck is you really want to be able to survive attacks as much as you can and make it as annoying for your opponent as possible. Like, you can just attack with the Garchomp and charge your stuff up, and then since it has free retreat, you just move onto one of the bench guys. And yeah, kind of just make it hard for your opponent to get all their prize cards. But we can, what I'm thinking is if they miss an attack, I kind of wanted them to get an attack this turn so that we could unfair stamp them and then hope that they miss an attack. But that's kind of going to be the goal, is to unfair stamp them and hope that they whiff a little bit. And maybe we can one-shot the Squawk ability for 2 of our prize cards. So like 2-shot this Raging Bolt, counter catcher the Squawk at some point, and then find another 2-shot on something with 2 different Okidogi attacks. And that should win the game in theory before for us before they win. Because we got this, then we can take 2, and then we'll both be at 4. It's kind of how you like do the prize mapping, is map out how you would take your 6 prize cards. So it would take us what, 2 attacks, 3 attacks, 5 attacks, and then will they win the game before we are able to win the game with our prize cards? And the answer is yes, but that's why we kind of need them to whiff off of an unfair stamp. And they already missed 1 attack, which is kind of nice for us. And since we're able to just throw 1 prizers in there, it kind of slows down how quickly they would be able to win the game, as long as we don't like evolve to Garchomps unnecessarily. But do get the Luminous Energy there, which is pretty important. And I Nest Ball for another Okidogi, since we're going to need that at some point. And then off of that Unfair Stamp, I don't really get much. But I'm also kind of hoping that they won't be able to knock my guy out this turn. 230 is kind of a lot. That's 4 energy they need for a 1/1 prize Pokemon, which normally 4 energy, like that big of a Pokemon, is always going to be taking 2 prize cards for him. So maybe there's a chance. And 2 cards isn't the most to work with. I would have liked to get rid of the Mew on the turn that I Unfair Stamp, but with a deck like this, there's nothing I can do about that. There's no way to ever one-shot this Mew. And they do just pass. That's pretty good. I think now that gives us a chance to win this game. And I do not get a Rare Candy off of the Greninja, which is kind of unfortunate. I could Pokestop for 1, but I don't really think that that's worth it. I don't expect them to disrupt my hand And even if they do disrupt my hand, then they're also not attacking for a knockout, so it's kind of a win-win. They keep drawing with their Ogerpon. Now they get a Vessel, so they are able to at the very least attach over 2 turns and attack next turn. But, oh, are they just gonna Burst Roar? No, that's interesting. I wonder why they chose to pass instead of use Burst Roar. We do get a boss though, so that can get the knockout on the Mew. And then all I need is for them to go down to 1 prize card so that I can counter catcher the Squawkabilly and win the game like that. Or I can attack into them with my benched Okidogi and then set up my other Garchomp and snipe the Raging Bolt for the rest of the damage. They do just draw and attack. Oh, but for some reason they get rid of one of their energies off of their Raging Bolt. That's kind of interesting, because maybe they just don't really know what to expect. Like if they think I've like got a Radiant Zard and a Magma Basin or something, but I can't really ever one-shot this Raging Bolt, so there's no point in not just leaving both of the energies on it. It definitely sometimes, like when you're like playing the deck, it can be hard to make that decision, but you just gotta look at my deck and see that there's absolutely no way that I can do 240 damage. And I am able to Iono them back down to 3 cards and also get another Gible on the bench, so that now they either knock out my Garchomp and I can counter catcher, or if they leave the Raging Bolt in the active, just knock it out. Or if they retreat and knock it out with their other Raging Bolt, I am able to snipe it with my other Garchomp. So it does give us a pretty decent chance to actually win this game. I have like everything I need in my hand too, so we just gotta see what they do. They do Prime Catcher up my Gible or Gabite, whatever it's called, which is smart. They know they don't want to go down to 1 prize and activate Counter Catcher, but I do just have the Luminous Energy in my hand to just attach and snipe, and we are able to end up taking that pretty bad matchup. So that's pretty cool. Alright, my opponent has a Comfy in the active and they're going first, so that's kind of scary. They do play down an Artazon though, which I don't know, maybe is a good sign that it's not like a Turbo Lost box, because this matchup should be pretty good unless they're able to Greninja us out of the game. But they do get rid of a Fire Energy there, so I don't really have to worry about Greninja, hopefully. Because I can't imagine they'd play Fire Energy in a Lost Zone deck with Greninja. They just Comfy away 2 energies, which is super interesting to me. I don't know that that's ever really what you want to do. Getting rid of energy in that deck feels so bad, especially that version where it barely plays any energy. But especially with the Artazon down, my hand is pretty solid here. I am just going to throw down a Greninja and an Ogerpon, because they can't hit into Ogerpon with anything in the deck except Sableye. And I would be able to hopefully find my Lost City by then and just put it in the Lost Zone. They might play 2 though, but maybe I can get the Bravery Charm on it as well and make it so they can't even 2-shot it. But this should be a decent matchup. They get rid of an Unfair Stamp, which I'm fine with seeing. I definitely don't want to be Unfair Stamped. And the next thing must have been double Colress, I would imagine. So they got rid of a Colress and an Unfair Stamp. So it's kind of weird. The only thing I could imagine getting rid of the Unfair Stamp for is a Colress, but then they get rid of 2 Colresses. Maybe they were kind of sequencing their turns strangely. I don't know. They do just attack with Cram though, and I didn't get an energy off of that Greninja last turn. I was kind of hoping to just get a supporter card, because I really would have loved to attach an energy to this Okidogi in the active so that I had the opportunity to take a knockout this turn, but nonetheless I didn't get to, so that's not happening this turn. I'm just going to grab the energy out of the vessel now so that I can get another one in the discard pile, so that if I get like Candy Garchomp Switch off of Iono, I am able to accelerate a few energy. And I do get Candy Garchomp and the Lost City, but no Switch. It's kind of weird because this deck only plays 3 rare candies, and I've been like trying a bunch of random stage 2 decks with like without Arvin, with just research and Iono, and I will just never find candy in the stage 2. But something about this deck, I've just been getting it, or I got it like every game that I played in Iono and needed it, so that is kind of cool. I'll definitely take it. It feels good to be on the good side of RNG on this game sometimes. But my opponent doesn't do much and just knocks out my Dogi. And I can just Artazon out another one and attach a Luminous to it. Maybe use Greninja too. I'm just debating if I want to leave them the Artazon, because that will let them get their Sableye or whatever they're planning on attacking me with. And I do use Bibarel before Greninja just so that I could draw a couple more cards. If I Greninja and just filled up my hand, I probably could only draw one with my Bibarel. But I am able to set up my Ogerpon now and my Okidogi, and hopefully they have a little bit of trouble finding a basic Pokemon. My opponent does make the mistake of sending up Cramorant. They definitely should have sent up their Comfy with the rescue board. It's kind of interesting that they didn't. And last turn I also should have used Irida for Unfair Stamp. For some reason I just didn't really think about it until right after I attacked. I was like, oh, I could Unfair Stamped him. For some reason I still don't think about that card that much when I'm playing online for some reason. Now my opponent sends up the Comfy, but I guess they really had no choice. It's kind of interesting. They also like went out of their way to put Manaphy down right as soon as they saw the Garchomp. I don't know what they're worried about me sniping, but they do get rid of a Sableye and then Nest Ball for their other Sableye. I'm not really too sure about that. It's kind of interesting. Presumably they took the Nest Ball over the Sableye and then Nest Balled for Sableye. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really too sure, but they are going to just attack with Sableye, I guess, and I'm guessing they're just going to put 120 damage onto my Ogerpon, I would assume. I guess they could go the route of knocking out everything else on my board, which it looks like they're going to do, and they're going to just try to ignore the Ogerpon or maybe two-shot it with this Iron Hands, but little do they know that it's not going to happen because that Iron Hands is definitely getting knocked out. And by knocking out my Gible for no reason, or Gabite or whatever it's called, they definitely messed up because now I can just Unfair Stamp them and take 2 prizes. Sableye isn't too much of a threat to me right now. Like, they can knock out my Bibarel or my Greninja, but that's not really a super big deal. I have enough attackers here to finish off the game. The only thing I would be worried about is if they were somehow able to knock out my Ogerpon and then TM Devo my Garchomp, but they'd also have to knock out my Okidogi too, so I think we pretty much got this one locked up. Yeah, they just retreat and attack with Sableye. They're unable to bump the Lost City. That should be all their attackers except Radiant Charizard, but I can just knock that out with my Garchomp or two-shot it with Ogerpon because they're not going to be able to hit into the Ogerpon with the Radiant Charizard. And here I don't know, I'm just kind of, I don't know what to do. I'm worried that there's something that they can do to trap me and win the game, but all I have to really do is attach the energy to the Bibarel and attack, and now I pretty much can't lose. Even though gusting up Bibarel really isn't even a threat because they have less cards in deck than me, and I would assume they only play 2 Sableye and they're both in the Lost Zone. and my opponent goes to Super Odd. I don't know if they didn't know what Lost City did there, but they concede as soon as they realize they have no Pokemon to Super Odd back. It's kind of unfortunate for them not being able to find their other stadium. I'm sure that they play a Lost Vacuum or a stadium of their own to bump mine, but just couldn't find it. But anyway, that is Garchomp. Like I said, there is someone playing this on online tournaments, and they're not doing the best with it, but they're definitely not doing the worst. They're winning some games. Yeah, it's definitely not a meta deck, but it's not the worst deck in the world. It's one of those decks where it's like, if it was around in a different time in the TCG, it would be a million times better, but it's just not there or here for the right time period with everything. Every deck having huge HP Pokemon and being able to one-shot everything. And this guy, like, you're relying on 2 shots and setting up a whole board and everything, and the Pokemon that you're setting up aren't as broken as other Pokemon like Charizard or Gardevoir. So really just kind of around in the wrong time, but it was definitely fun to play, a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. You can kind of like finagle some games that I don't think you should be able to win just off of having a huge hit point, 1 prize Pokemon, and being able to put energy wherever you want. So like or dislike and comment and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, sorry I haven't posted in a while now. I don't know, things have been kind of weird, been kind of out of it, but I was able to record today, so that's good. So take care.